came home from a 12-hour shift to find her car in his garage again. Not on the street, not in the guest lot. In his private, deeded, single-car garage, the one he'd spent 2 weekends insulating and organizing after his wife passed, the one with his tools on the wall and his late son's bicycle still hanging from the ceiling. Third time in 6 weeks. Same pearl-white SUV, same complete absence of shame. Ted Garner stood in the driveway holding his keys and made a decision he should have made sooner. But what Karen didn't know was that Ted had spent the last 2 weekends preparing exactly 2 surprises for the next time she pulled in. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you love HOA revenge stories, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what comes next. Ted Garner was 66 years old, widowed, and a retired electrician with 34 years of service to the city of Hargrove, Georgia. When his wife of 31 years passed from cancer, the house they'd shared felt like a place designed for 2 people and occupied by 1. He sold it, moved into Hargrove Crossing, a tidy HOA community where the units were smaller, the maintenance was handled, and he wouldn't have to look at a yard that used to be her garden. He brought his tools, his workbench, and the bicycle his son had left behind when he moved to Portland. The single-car garage was the whole point, a place to work with his hands in the evenings the way he always had. He noticed Lynette Morse the second day. HOA president for 6 consecutive years, Lynette moved through Hargrove Crossing with the particular confidence of a woman who had decided that elected authority and personal ownership were the same thing. Blazer always crisp, highlighted hair always set, a binder of community guidelines she consulted the way a lawyer consults case files. She welcomed Ted with a handshake and a smile and an immediate comment that the garage door he'd left open while unloading was technically creating a visibility obstruction under community aesthetic guidelines, and he'd want to be mindful of that going forward. Ted thanked her, went back to unloading. 3 weeks later, he came home to find her pearl-white SUV parked inside his garage door left open, a sticky note on his workbench explaining that she had needed to take a call and his garage had been available. He read the note twice. Then he went inside and made dinner, because he was a man who thought before he acted. He just hadn't decided yet what the action would be. Ted knocked on Lynette's door the following morning, politely, the way his father had taught him to handle things that needed handling. He explained, without heat, that his garage was private property, deeded specifically to his unit, and that parking inside it without permission was trespassing, regardless of whether the door had been left open. Lynette listened with the patient expression of a woman who had already decided she wasn't wrong, and told him she understood his concern and would be more thoughtful going forward. She was not more thoughtful going forward. The second time happened 5 days later. Same SUV, same open door Ted had left up while he ran inside to grab his work gloves. He came back out to find her car in his space, Lynette nowhere in sight, and no note this time. He photographed the vehicle, the license plate, the timestamp on his phone, sent a formal written complaint to the HOA board with the photographs attached. The board responded 12 days later. The letter acknowledged his concern and noted that the matter had been reviewed internally. It said nothing else. That was when his neighbor across the row, a retired postal worker named Dennis, who had lived in Hargrove Crossing for 11 years, told Ted what he already suspected. Dennis had watched Lynette use the same approach on a young woman in Unit 14, a radiologist who worked overnight shifts and often left her garage door cracked for ventilation. Lynette had parked inside 3 times before the woman finally padlocked her door shut. The HOA board had done nothing then either. Dennis had the dates written down in a pocket notebook he kept for exactly such things. He produced it over the shared parking lot fence without being asked. Ted made a copy of Dennis's notes, filed a second formal complaint with the county property office citing documented trespassing and selective enforcement, received a form letter acknowledging receipt. Nothing else arrived in the following 6 weeks. Then Lynette changed the nature of the problem entirely. Ted returned home one evening to find not only her SUV in his garage, but a second vehicle, a compact sedan belonging to her daughter who was apparently visiting, parked across the front of the garage opening, blocking Ted's access entirely. His truck sat in the driveway, his garage, his tools, his workbench, the bicycle on the ceiling, all of it behind someone else's vehicles on someone else's schedule. He called the non-emergency police line. An officer arrived, confirmed the vehicles were on private deeded property without permission, and told Ted that towing was an option but would require a civil procedure since the HOA had a private towing arrangement that complicated direct action. It could take days. Ted sat on his porch that evening for a long time. He wasn't angry the way he used to get angry in his 30s. He was quiet, in the way men get quiet when they have decided something that cannot be undecided. He was a retired electrician. He knew how garages worked. He knew how automatic door openers worked. He knew how timers worked. He knew how cameras worked. And he knew that the third time was going to be the last time because he had spent 2 weekends making absolutely certain of it. Ted had installed 2 things. The first was a smart garage door system, a device he wired himself in an afternoon, connected to his phone, that allowed him to open and close his garage door remotely from anywhere in a 5-mile radius. Fully permitted, fully above board, exactly the kind of installation a 34-year licensed electrician could do in his sleep. The second was a security camera, a wide-angle model he mounted himself in the corner of the garage ceiling, recording continuously to a cloud account with a motion-activated alert that sent a notification to his phone the moment anything larger than a cat moved inside. The notification arrived on a Saturday morning while Ted was having breakfast at the diner 2 blocks away with Dennis. He checked his phone, saw the pearl-white SUV easing into his garage through the live camera feed, watched Lynette step out, look around with the casual familiarity of a woman in a space she considered available to her, and walk toward the community walking path. He finished his coffee, then he opened his phone, pressed a button, and closed the garage door. He and Dennis walked back at a normal pace. By the time they arrived, Lynette had been inside the closed garage for 11 minutes. She had knocked on the internal access door, locked as it always was, and had apparently begun making calls on her phone. 3 neighbors had noticed the closed door on what was typically an open garage and had gathered near the driveway. 2 of them had their phones out. Ted opened the garage door from his phone while still 20 feet away, so everyone watching saw it rise before he arrived. Lynette came out. She began immediately, told the gathered neighbors that the door had malfunctioned, that she had simply stepped inside briefly to retrieve something she had stored there previously with Ted's full knowledge. Dennis held up his pocket notebook and asked, loudly enough for everyone to hear, which visit that would have been, the first, the second, or the one where her daughter's car had blocked Ted's truck in the driveway. Then Lynette made the mistake that finished her. Flustered, 2 phones recording, she turned to the nearest neighbor and said that she had a key to this garage from a previous arrangement with the HOA and that Ted had never formally revoked it. There was no key. There had never been a key. There had never been any arrangement. She had just told 6 witnesses that she believed she had institutional access to a private resident's deeded garage. Ted looked at the camera in the corner of his garage ceiling, still recording, as it had been since installation. The expression on his face was the quietest kind of satisfied. Dennis submitted his pocket notebook to the county property board the following Monday. Ted's attorney filed a formal trespass complaint that same afternoon, citing 3 documented incidents, time-stamped camera footage from all 3, and Lynette's recorded statement claiming institutional access that did not exist. The HOA's insurance carrier contacted the board within 2 weeks. The phrase unauthorized access claim appeared in their letter 4 times. The phrase civil liability appeared twice. The county property board completed its review in 3 weeks. It found that Lynette Morse had accessed a private deeded garage without permission on at least 3 occasions, had made a false claim of institutional access in front of witnesses, and had used her position as HOA president to insulate herself from board accountability during the complaint process. Lynette resigned from the HOA presidency 19 days after the Saturday morning confrontation. She submitted her resignation by email. The board accepted it at their next meeting by a vote of 5-0, the 5th member being the one she had personally appointed to the seat 2 years earlier. The community installed a formal policy requiring written permission for any non-owner use of deeded garages. It passed unanimously at the first meeting following Lynette's departure. Ted kept the smart garage system, still uses it every evening to close the door before he goes inside. The camera is still up in the corner, still recording, though it rarely captures anything more interesting than his own reflection while he works at the bench. The bicycle still hangs from the ceiling where his son left it. He's thought about taking it down. He probably won't. Some things are exactly where they're supposed to be. He has no regrets. He installed legal equipment in his own garage, recorded what his own camera captured, and pressed one button on his own phone. Everything else took care of itself. Here's what I want to know. Leave it in the comments. If someone kept walking into a space that belonged to you and the system kept doing nothing, how long before you would have done exactly what Ted did? If you enjoyed watching karma work, smash that like button and subscribe. I post new HOA revenge stories every week. Comment below. Have you ever dealt with a Karen like this?